Silence, a concept so simple, yet in its absolute form, it can be deafening. Have you ever found yourself sitting alone, surrounded by nothing but the quiet hum of existence, only to feel the hair on your neck stand up? That moment when silence stops being peaceful and transforms into an oppressive force. It seeps into your bones, tickling a primal fear buried deep within. This is not just your imagination, it's the mind's natural response to an unnatural stillness. But why does silence feel this way? Why does it so often resemble the tension of a horror movie? To understand, we must first explore the relationship between silence and the unknown. You see, the human brain thrives on patterns, on noise, predictable, familiar sounds that tell us we are safe. When those sounds disappear, the brain panics, trying to fill the void. Silence strips away certainty. It amplifies every creak, every whisper of wind, every subtle shift in the air. And suddenly, what was once a moment of peace becomes a breeding ground for dread. It's not the quiet itself that scares us, it's what the quiet might be hiding. Because when it's too quiet, we wonder, are we really alone?
As the tension builds, the mind starts to create its own narrative. Without the usual distractions, it begins to search for meaning in every subtle noise. The mind, ever on alert, amplifies the smallest disturbances, a creak in the floorboards, a faint rustle of the curtains. The more you listen, the more you realize how much you've been ignoring before. Silence suddenly makes you hyper-aware of everything around you. You can feel the floor beneath you shift, the air grow heavy, as if the stillness itself has a presence. But it's not just the absence of sound that induces this fear, it's what it represents. Silence is a blank canvas for our darkest thoughts. The absence of external noise means there's nothing to filter the thoughts that race through our minds. And that's where fear thrives. The unknown, the possibilities. The thoughts that we push to the back of our minds suddenly surface, uninvited. Every dark corner of the room now becomes a potential hiding place. Every shadow seems to shift. Every crack in the wall seems to grow larger. The house that once felt like a safe haven now feels like a trap. Every room echoes with the unsettling idea that something or someone might be lurking just beyond the edges of your perception. And that's the crux of it. Silence reveals what we fear the most, what we can't see. Our brains become so attuned to the quiet that every small shift in the environment is noticed. The darkness grows thicker, almost tangible. It feels like the silence is pushing against the walls, closing in. In moments like this, your senses are heightened. The faintest sound, a rustle, a footstep, a whisper, becomes impossible to ignore. The silence has drawn your attention so intensely that it's as if your brain is amplifying everything around you. Your eyes dart around the room, trying to find the source of the sound that doesn't seem to belong. But nothing is there. You've built this monster in your mind, your body reacting to the fear it's created. That unsettling sensation you feel at the back of your neck, the tightening of your chest, these are all part of the silent tension, the anticipation that something is about to happen, even though nothing has. The silence is the waiting game. It holds you hostage, keeping you on edge, suspended in a moment that feels like it could explode at any second. And yet, it remains, silent, still, and terrifying. The fear comes not from what's happening, but from what could happen, from the endless possibilities that the mind weaves in the absence of sound. The longer the silence drags on, the more your imagination takes control, painting vivid images of horror that only exist in your mind. You start to feel the walls close in, the air grow heavy, as if something unseen is standing just behind you. But when you turn around, nothing. The room is as empty as it was moments ago. But the silence remains, and with it, the fear. In those moments, the silence becomes the villain, the unseen force that feeds on our imagination, making us question our surroundings, our own safety. The stillness in the air becomes suffocating, and you start to wonder if this isn't just a quiet moment after all, but a scene from a horror movie where every second feels like a countdown to something you can't predict. The silence forces you to face your deepest fears, ones you can't run from because they exist only in your mind. You start to question yourself. Am I really alone? Is someone watching me? The shadows grow longer, and with them, the sense of being followed, stalked even. It's as if you're being drawn into a world where reality and imagination blur together. The silence is both a shield and a trap. It makes you feel safe, but it also isolates you, locking you into a world where your own thoughts are the only thing keeping you company. You try to shake it off. You tell yourself it's just your imagination, that there's no reason to be afraid. But the silence presses in closer, and you can't help but wonder, what if the silence isn't just quiet? What if it's hiding something? As the minutes stretch on, the silence grows deeper, heavier. It wraps itself around you like a thick fog, filling every corner of your mind and room. At first, it was just an absence of sound, a quiet lull that you could ignore. But now, it has taken on a life of its own, becoming the oppressive presence in the room. Your body tenses, your heart rate increases. The faintest sound now feels like a loud crash. Your mind races with possibilities, filling the void with an unrelenting string of what-ifs. Every creak of the house, every shift in the floorboards sends a surge of adrenaline through your veins. You realize you can't remember the last time you felt this alert, this hyper-aware of every little thing around you. And then, the fear starts to take shape. It's not just that something might be in the room with you. It's that the silence is so consuming, you start to feel like you are the intruder. What if this place wasn't as empty as you thought? What if the silence wasn't meant to be a respite, but a warning? Your thoughts start to spiral. The room feels smaller now, like the walls are slowly inching toward you, closing in with each passing second. You're trapped, suspended in this moment, suspended in the quiet. The air is thick with tension, as if something is about to happen, but the fear of the unknown is worse than any anticipated noise. The sound of your own breath is deafening in the stillness. Each inhale and exhale seems to echo through the silence, your body betraying your own fear. You begin to question yourself. Why is your mind working overtime to create all these terrifying scenarios? Why does your body react this way to nothing but the absence of sound? It's the power of silence. It's the mind's natural tendency to fill voids, to seek explanations, to create narratives when there's no stimulus to ground us. The longer you sit in that silence, the more your perception begins to change. What once felt like a place of comfort now feels like an alien landscape, unfamiliar and threatening. The very silence you thought would bring peace now feels like a trap, locking you in a mental cage. And in this cage, your thoughts run wild, and the fear grows stronger. You want to break free, to make noise, to do anything to shatter the silence and restore order. But something keeps you rooted in place. The longer you stay, the more you feel the grip of the silence tightening. You're no longer just waiting for the silence to end. You're waiting for something to happen. Something you can't control. It's a sense of anticipation, but not in the way you're used to. There's no safety in waiting for a sound, for some sign that you're not alone. Instead, there's a growing dread. The silence makes you feel like an intruder in your own space, like you don't belong here anymore. It's almost as though the room itself is aware of your presence, watching you as you sit, frozen in place. And that perhaps is the most terrifying part of it all. The idea that the silence is not merely empty, but it's watching, waiting, observing. You try to shake off the creeping feeling, tell yourself that it's just your imagination running wild. But then the room shifts. Just slightly, but enough for you to feel it. A new layer of tension fills the space. And it's in that moment, as the silence hangs over you, that you realize you can't escape it. The silence is not just an absence of sound. It is the thing that surrounds you, that fills every corner, that invades your mind. And in that silence, you are never truly alone. As time drags on, you start to feel the weight of silence pressing on your chest, suffocating in its own way. Your mind begins to play tricks on you. You wonder if the house, this space you've known for so long, has changed, if it somehow turned against you. The air feels colder now, the shadows darker, and the silence feels like it's thickening with each passing moment. But the thing about silence is that it doesn't just trap you physically. It traps you mentally. Your mind races, running through every possible scenario, every worst-case situation. It's as if the quiet itself is daring you to confront your fears head-on. The longer you sit in it, the more your perception of reality warps. You question everything: the creak of the floorboards, the whisper of wind outside, the flicker of the light bulb. Each sound now feels magnified, and every shadow seems to shift in the corner of your eye. What was once a peaceful space now feels like a haunting, a place where something unseen is lurking, just out of sight. You can't shake the feeling that it's there, watching you, waiting for you to make the first move. But even worse than the fear of the unknown is the realization that silence doesn't just leave you in suspense, it changes you. You become more attuned to your own body, your heartbeat echoes in your chest, your breath becomes shallow, almost frantic. You feel more alive, but only in the most unsettling way. The silence itself forces you to acknowledge every shift in your body, every flutter of your thoughts. And then there's the stillness of the world around you. The absence of the outside world's hum, no traffic, no distant chatter, no rustling of leaves, makes the quiet seem endless, like it's stretched across time. You feel like you're in a void, suspended in a moment that could go on forever. The longer you remain in it, the more the silence consumes you. Your mind doesn't just react, it begins to spiral. It conjures images, dark thoughts that only make sense in the absence of noise. You think about the things you've hidden in the back of your mind, those repressed memories, those fears you've tried to ignore. Silence unearths them, one by one, until your thoughts are flooded with dark imaginings. You begin to wonder if you're still the same person who walked into this room moments ago, or if the silence has already changed you. What once felt like a safe, familiar space now feels like a stage, and you, a reluctant actor in a scene where you can't predict the next line. Every glance at the door feels like it might open to reveal something lurking just beyond. Every corner of the room seems to stretch further, casting longer shadows that swallow everything in their path. The silence amplifies everything, your thoughts, your fears, your doubts. And as it grows heavier, you begin to realize that it's not just the space around you that's changing, but you, yourself. It's a transformation that happens without you even noticing, until it's too late. And that's what makes silence so terrifying. It doesn't just bring fear of the unknown, it brings the fear of your own mind. It forces you to confront the things you've buried deep inside, to question your own sanity, your own sense of safety. In silence, you are left alone with your thoughts, and sometimes, that's the most terrifying thing of all. Because when there's nothing to distract you, nothing to break the quiet, your mind becomes its own worst enemy. And then the silence breaks. It's almost as if, in the instant it becomes unbearable, something shifts. A noise, no matter how small, pierces the stillness. A sigh of relief washes over you, at first. But even that relief is fleeting, because now, after everything, you realize that the silence has left its mark. The tension, the fear, the lingering feeling of being watched, it's all still there, just beneath the surface. The silence has transformed you, shaped your experience in ways you can't fully explain. It's not just the absence of sound that you fear anymore. It's the power of silence itself. You are different now. And as unsettling as that may seem, perhaps that's the true horror of it all. That silence doesn't just hold us in suspense. It changes us. It forces us to confront parts of ourselves we'd rather leave untouched. So the next time you find yourself alone in a room, surrounded by nothing but quiet, remember this. Silence is never just empty. It's full of everything your mind is too afraid to say out loud. It's in the quiet moments that we truly meet ourselves. What are you hiding in your own silence? If you've ever felt this way, or if you've had your own experiences with silence creeping into your life like a scene from a horror movie, I want to hear from you. Drop a comment below and share your thoughts. How does silence make you feel? Have you ever been trapped by it, caught in that eerie stillness? Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon for more stories that explore the shadows of our minds. Remember, silence may be golden, but sometimes it's also terrifying. Thanks for watching, and until next time, stay aware, stay safe, and listen carefully.